And I think let's go ahead and get into some news to discuss. Let's get into the Superman on film update for May the
Yes.
6th, 2022. Now, unfortunately, this update is going to be a lot more like some of our earlier ones where there wasn't a ton to say because there hasn't been anything new, so to speak, in terms of news or hot crazy rumors. But something I just wanted to share. There's a tweet from Frosty from Collider, Stephen Weitraub. Are you
Yes.
familiar
Yes.
with him at
Yes.
all? Yeah. So Frosty is like me. He's another avowed Superman fanatic who always seems to have his ear to the ground for anything related to Superman. And he was very much trying to find out Henry Cavill's future a few years back. He's someone who's out there with, beating the pavement, trying to find whatever he can about Superman. And he tweeted something a couple days ago that I just want to share with you guys because I feel some of this way too. But he says, if you know me, you know how much I love Superman. So when I saw WB Pictures chairman Toby Emmerich tonight, walked right up to him and asked about the next Superman movie. Won't say what he said to me since it might have been off the record, but progress is being made. So listen, there's no details there. There's not a lot to go on. But if Frosty spoke to Emmerich and he's basically pulling the "my lips are sealed" card, but something's happening. Something's happening. So that I have goosebumps thinking about
Right.
that. I have literal goosebumps. I'm such a dork, but I'm like, something is coming. There's going to be news on a Superman movie soon, and I'm very excited for that. And the only other sort of like rumor Superman on film related that I wanted to bring up here before we go to our next topic is there have been some interesting murmurs that we might not, or no, I should say, we've heard that we might not see Henry Cavill Superman in the flesh, that we might see some archival footage of him on a TV screen. We've also heard that he might get retconned just completely, entirely out of the continuity and have Supergirl take over. There's an interesting thing that came up in the last few days about how we might see old school versions of these characters too. Like we're talking like when it comes to Batman, there's a shot at Adam West's Batman. But when it comes to Superman, there's people talking about we may very well see Christopher Reeve's Superman in the Flash movie. So when
Oh.
it comes to all this multiverse stuff, when we see Barry going to all the different Earths and I guess maybe testing out his powers for the first time, maybe it's in a quick sort of montage, I would imagine. But apparently it looks like we're going to bump into even the Linda Carter Wonder Woman. There's all these rumors of like vintage versions of these characters are going to be shown or glimpsed in some fashion in this Flash movie. And that to me is something like I feel like I've been hearing little murmurs like that for years. I remember hearing something like 3 or 4 years ago, and at the time, people thought it was going to be for one of the CW crossovers. But I remember hearing like 3 or 4 years ago that Warner Brothers was working on like an uncanny, perfect photorealistic CG model of the Christopher Reeve Superman to use in some sort of upcoming media. So I wonder now if any of that was being done in anticipation of Flashpoint or what. But either way, like I've been hearing murmurs that we might see the Reeve Superman in a new DC thing for a while now. So I'm just really curious if that's going to happen. And I'm just curious, Brett, like how would you feel if they do find a way to work in like you see like the Adam West Bats, or you see the Linda Carter Wonder Woman, or you see the Christopher Reeve Superman? Does that like when you hear that, does that excite you right away, or does that make you go?
Well, yeah, I mean, I feel that's part of the fun, like of having the Flash and doing like a storyline like this where you're doing the multiverse. Like, yeah, if everything's going to be connected, if you're going to bring Michael Keaton back, then yeah, I guess we should see a glimpse of everything. I'm curious. I just hope they don't like overdo it with like
Yeah,
Christopher Reeve, and they don't like it's not too long of a lingering scene or something. Because
yeah,
we've talked about before, like obviously. They probably saw the success of bringing Luke back, in the Mandalorian and stuff, but
yeah.
I've expressed my concern. I'm like, okay, I've seen him twice now. But like, I don't know if I need to push him in there again. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah,
Unless
yeah,
you're just
yeah,
gonna like totally recast the role
yeah,
and like and he's that character. But with Christopher Reeve, also like it's different. Mark Hamill's still alive. Christopher Reeve, obviously, we know what happened with him. The tragic accident, and then obviously he's no longer with us. So it gives me like Tupac hologram Tupac vibes, which I'm like I don't know. So it's like I'm trepidatious, but again, that is the fun. Like if we're showing that all these things do exist in the continuity somehow, like they're parallel universes to everything. Have some fun with it. Give us a little fan
yeah.
service. So it's like yes, but I'm trepidatious when you say the Christopher Reeve thing.
Yeah, I mean, and it's funny you mentioned that, like what you just said about seeing all that stuff, so to speak. Andy Muschietti said early on this thing about how this movie is going to establish that everything you've ever seen exists.
Right.
And I feel like that almost is like a clue or is like a hint of like, we're gonna be reaching back. It's not just Michael Keaton. Everything DC is actually somewhat canon with this movie because we're gonna basically we're gonna reveal that it all these different Earths house all the different DC iterations that you've seen over the years. And I just listen. I'm with you. I hope that it's not hokey. I hope first of all, I hope it looks great. Because if we're talking about like if we're using those Luke cameos as some sort of comparison, I felt like when he showed up at the end of Mandalorian season 2, I don't think they quite nailed it. You know what I mean? To me, he
Right.
still looked like a CG character. They got it now in Book of Boba Fett. I'm like, that
Yes.
looks
Yeah.
almost absolutely perfect. But that's the thing. Like, if they're gonna do this, it better look amazing. If they have it up there and I have to do one of those, if it's like when Henry Cavill's mustache all over again in Justice League, where
Yeah.
I'm like, are you really asking me to ignore how
There's the
crappy this
uncanny
looks?
valley,
Yeah, like
and that's the thing where you kind of like feel like you're like, oh, it looks a little off. I'm revolted. It's like, and like
yeah, yeah,
I don't want that because then it does it kind of ruins it.
and it
I hope
makes it
it's
the
just
whole
like
thing a
quick
gimmick.
little glimpses.
Yeah,
It could be really fun where he's just kind of zipping through and there's like a quick thing and he's like, oh, and they look at each other and then he just zips out. Like
yeah,
you can have a little fun with that, but it also could get a little Looney Tunes too, right? So
yeah.
hopefully they find the balance.
Hopefully they find that sweet balance and it doesn't just feel like they're using nostalgia as a crutch because that's the big thing, right?
Right.
But then again, that was my big concern with Spider-Man No Way Home, and they ended up nailing it. Because when I heard those
Right.
initial rumors about Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield and Alfred Molina as Dr. Octopus, I'm like, oh, I hope that they do this
Yeah.
justice, that it actually pays off. It means something to the current continuity. It pushes our main hero further along in his hero's journey and isn't just some kind of, hey, look, here are older versions of these characters you liked.
Right.
So I hope that they handle it with
Yeah.
some thought and dignity and don't just try to cash in and make us go, oh, I remember him.
Yeah. And listen, there
Um,
are those that I've seen very vocal people on online criticize No Way Home and say that without the nostalgia play, the movie's like really not that good and a mess. And I definitely fall in the camp where I really enjoyed it and loved it, but there are
yeah,
people that
yeah,
felt like they did kind of lean on the nostalgia crutch. So I
yeah,
mean, you're not gonna please everybody, but
yeah.
it's tricky when you're doing this stuff. So we'll see what happens.
Mm-hmm.
But hey, like I said, I think overall as a fan, it's cool. Hopefully they do it well. You know.
Mm-hmm. I'm just telling you right now, too, if I hear any bars of the John Williams Superman march mixed into the sound for this movie, and we have a really good looking Reeve Superman on screen for a moment, I'm going to be a mess in the theater. So I hope you're ready to hold me close, Brett.
The only thing I can hope for is that the Flash zips in on the end of Superman 2. He sees that cellophane S and he goes, my Superman can't do that. And then he just zips right out.
he catches it out of midair, like, what the hell is this? And
Yeah, that's the right way to do it. That's the right
yeah,
way to do it.
that you know what that wouldn't be half bad.
Yeah.
But so yeah, there you go, folks. That is your Superman on film update for the week. Uh, their progress is happening according to Collider Frosty and his conversation with Toby Emmerich, and we might be seeing some old school versions of all of our heroes, including the iconic Christopher Reeve Superman in The Flash next year on June 23rd. Did I mention that's my birthday? All right.